Kate Vendimio. I am founder and CEO of Mount Vernon Consulting. And joining me here is,
Mac Monroe, founder and CEO of Boss Builders.
and Mac and I are both very excited about the transition that is coming up because the Boss Builders program will be moving under the umbrella of Mount Vernon Consulting this summer. Alas, do not be worried because Mac's expertise will carry on through all of the assets that he is going to be sharing with us in the Mount Vernon community. So we are really, really excited about this partnership. It's something that has been in talks for a long time. But before we get into that, Mac, why don't you just share with the audience a little bit more about your background and experience, and then I will do the same thing on my end.
Perfect. Well, for those of you watching this that have been clients of Boss Builders, you probably know the origin stories. But for those folks that are clients of Kate, it's probably good to know kind of what you're getting yourself into. So, while most people that do what we do go through formal education and they have certifications, frankly, I started doing this and I made the decision to do it on the morning of October the 11th, 1996. That was the morning when I was on active duty that I nearly took a swing at my boss. And at the time, I was really struggling, having been in the Navy at that time about maybe 13 years, not knowing if I wanted to stay in, not knowing what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. My wife and I were trying to get this commissioning program, so that pushed us to get our degrees in healthcare management, and then we needed a master's. And so for me, math is my worst subject. So the only degree I could find for a master's without math was organizational leadership. And even then, I'm a terrible student. I'm lazy. I didn't like doing it. And I just thought I'm totally just ungrounded. But this boss I had was a tyrant. And every day I dreaded coming to work. And I just hated my morning meetings with him. He talked to you like a child. Wasn't like he was a screamer. But the worst part is he smiled all the time. Even when he was angry, he'd just make his ears turn red. And it was just this creepy guy. But when he talked to you like a child, that was the worst part. On this particular morning, he was in rare form. And so he asked me about the status of the plan of the week. Now, the plan of the week is a document the Navy puts out, it's a little agenda. And I says, I don't know. He says, well, when are you going to update the one in the officers' lounge? I says, I haven't done it. I'm sorry. He says, come on, let's go look at it, shall we? So I have to walk back like a little child. Then he's looking at the plan of the week. There's a whole bunch on a clipboard. And he says, look at this. This is over 2 weeks old. Don't they teach you how to read calendars in that master's program you're taking? That's when I snapped. Now, he didn't see it because his back was to me, but I raised up my fist, ready to cave in the back of his head. And the only reason I didn't kill him that morning is because my son, Dustin, was about 3 months old. And I figure if I kill my boss, I'm going to jail. My son will never see his father. He'll wind up in the system. I had a whole narrative. But the beauty was, I knew exactly what the rest of my life was going to look like from that moment. And it did not involve the Navy. So at that moment, I knew I was going to be management developing all the rest of my career. And at that point, kind of like if you watched When Harry Met Sally, the last few lines, I love it. He says to Sally, when you find the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. And for me, that's what I wanted. And so I made plans to walk out of the Navy at the 15-year mark, which I did. That meant I had to figure out how to make this work. And so it took time, it took learning, but building the business slowly but surely, it's grown into what Boss Builders has become. And we've got clients in all sorts of different industries. We've done workshops in 7 different foreign countries, 24 different states, and really have a legacy of course materials based on experience. For me, though, my greatest fear has and always will be irrelevance. And I believe it was in about 2011 when I was still living down in the DC area, I attended an event called Get Motivated. I invited a lot of my friends back then because you buy one ticket for $1.95 and you can get as many as you want. And some of the speakers are really good. Colin Powell was the end speaker at the end of the day. And I think Sugar Ray Leonard was one. And there was a lot of celebrities. But one of the highlights is right before lunch, the legendary Zig Ziglar gives a presentation. And if you've ever heard Zig, he's an amazing, he's passed away now, but wrote some great books, a great speaker, so motivational. And so he gets up, and he has his daughter with him. He's pretty old by then, and everybody's cheering. He's got that same wonderful smile. You can see it on the big screen, and his eyes are just shining. And he starts to talk, and he says, people ask me, Zig, are you retired? No, I ain't retired. I'm refired. But at that point, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of fire. And then he started into a story, and we all laugh and clap. And then a moment later, he says the same story a second time, and we all hold up, and then everybody claps again. And then a moment later, a third time. And then his daughter intervened and said, Daddy, tell him about when you sell pots and pans door to door. And at that moment, I made a commitment to myself. That will never be me. My greatest fear is irrelevance. And so I made a promise to myself that when the time was right, I would make the move and I would not wait till too long. And so it's not that I can't remember my name anymore and I can't do this and that anymore. It's at the point where I feel like I'm at the point now where, and please don't think this is arrogant, but I believe now I'm as good as I've ever been. And I cannot think of a better time and a better age of 61 than to transition this to somebody else, which brings us to my meeting with Kate Vendemio back in 2019. Now,
Mhm.
Kate was on a podcast of mine, and we had got to meet that way. And at the time, I was trying to scale my business. So I was looking for trainers, and Kate and I made a commitment to connect. We met up at a restaurant called the Mad Dog, and I think it was in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And we kind
Mhm.
of talked about working together. And then COVID happened, and things happened, and then business tanked, and it was just a really hard time. Well, Kate and I have reconnected, and as things have sort of improved for me, and I'm realizing the time is right, it seemed like the right time to actually engage with Kate and see if she'd be interested in sort of taking Boss Builders with her to the next level, enabling me to take the rest of my life to where I want it to be, which brings us to the big transition we're talking about today. So, for me personally, it's the course materials we've built has just been based on a lot of experience. We've done a lot of work in personality instruments. Personally, I have administered about 4,000 MBTIs and debriefed those. So I feel very good about what we've created, but I feel even better that it's getting into some really, really good hands. So that's me for whatever it's worth, Kate.
Well, thanks, Mac. And as anyone who has worked with Mac understands that Mac is being very humble right now, that you have a lot of significant experience, very visionary. And we are really honored at Mount Vernon to take this program, and we are excited, have lots of energy to take it to a new level. So a little bit just about my background for those of you that are coming here and seeing this from the Boss Builders side. So as Mac referenced, we both met when we were in the Washington, D.C. area. I moved to DC in 2005, so I'm coming up on 20 years living here, and came because I wanted an adventure. I was young and wanted to live in a quote big city and have a great time, and only had plans to be here for maybe a year or two. Well, as life has a way of working out, next thing I know, I started doing some work with some foundations that supported leadership development within the federal government. I then did a brief stint working in the federal government as an appointee for about 4 years. And then once that was over, I went and worked in the consulting space for a consulting firm for many years, where I consulted to several different federal agencies, and we also did some support work for private sector as well. So up to leading to me starting my business, I had had about 15 years of experience working in nonprofits, corporate, consulting, federal government. And so I sort of joke that I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life until I realized that entrepreneurship was really the path for me. And for me, where I really came to that decision point is when I started my business in 2018. I had two very young children at home. And it might sound counterintuitive to start a business when you have really young children, but my consulting career at the firm was starting to grow, And that meant that the opportunities were growing, and many of those opportunities were expanding to projects that were significantly further away from my home than I wanted to commute. And if anyone has commuted in Washington, D.C., you know that a 20-mile commute one way could easily take you an hour and a half. So after 6 years of commuting an hour and a half each way through two pregnancies, and rushing in at the last minute, always being one of the last ones to pick up my kids from daycare, my husband and I talked it through and decided that 2018 was the year that I was going to give it a try to launch on my own. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad is a lawyer by training, but ran and started and grew two insurance adjusting firms through the years. I have uncles that were architects and became well-known builders. Another uncle who was an engineer and created his own engineering firm. So we've got lots of entrepreneurs. I was excited to be the first female in that line of family members to launch out on her own. So, but in terms of the type of work that I've done, I have always, in one way or another, been involved in the human resources organizational development world. Started off in recruiting, then, as I referenced, I worked for a leadership development program, and that's where I was a program manager, but I got to see the side of the consultants who worked with those aspiring federal leaders to help them become stronger leaders. And not only that, but we traveled around the country benchmarking different private sector and then federal, state, and local governments to learn from the best of the best. So I got to see Howard Schultz over at Starbucks headquarters. We got to do taste testing of different coffees at Starbucks, which was really fun. I hung out with Customs and Border Protection down at the San Ysidro border and actually was one of the people hanging out of the booths waving as people were coming through from Mexico to the US. And that was right as CFPB was combining, because that's when Department of Homeland Security was formed. They started bringing together, I think it was Customs and Immigration and then Border Patrol. They merged them into the two organizations into one federal agency. Massive change management program. And we got to sit there and hear from the experts. We were down in New Orleans about a year after Hurricane Katrina hit, got to speak to newspaper reporters, FEMA workers. We got to actually spend time. Some of us got permission to come down early and we helped rebuild some homes in the lower Ninth Ward. So while I was planning the programmatic side of the learning, I was also getting this firsthand experience of different people across the country who are experiencing what it's like to be a leader, sometimes reluctantly, right? Sometimes they don't want to be leaders, but they got put into that position. Another crazy story is my fun fact, or not so fun fact, is that I spent time in San Quentin prison up in California, because we had a meeting with the warden up there, the warden of San Quentin. What I did not realize was that we actually got a tour of San Quentin prison, which was a terrifying experience for me, who was probably in my mid-20s. And especially because as soon as we got in, they mentioned as an afterthought, oh, by the way, we do not negotiate hostage situations. So I spent my time touring around and learning about the recidive justice and ways that the warden has been working with the state and federal representatives while I was clutching the behind of the instructor in front. He was in front of me and I was behind him, like ducked behind, because I was, Scott Peterson was there, Charles Manson was there. It was a terrifying experience. So all that is to say, I have had such an opportunity to learn on the job as I went through things. Then when I wrapped at the federal government, I worked in strategic planning. And then when I moved into the consulting firm is really when I started focusing on the learning and development side of things, the instructional design of things. How do adults learn? How do adults take the information that we're sharing with them and apply it? And I will tell you that's one of the core values of the Mount Vernon Consulting and our training programs and what we offer is that we want to provide real life training and learning experiences so that you can take that information and immediately apply it back into the workforce. Yes, we will talk about some theories, but we're going to talk about those theories in the context of what you can do as a leader, how you can apply that. And your leadership doesn't have to be at the C level. You could be a first time supervisor, you could be an aspiring supervisor. So, what we really want to do is create this program where you can take what you're learning, you take it back to the workforce, you try it out, you experiment, you experience it, and then we work together to learn from each other through this cohort program. So that's why I'm really excited about the Boss Builders program. The foundations of it are so strong. Mac has been doing this for many, many years. It is a proven formula. It is the content is really valuable. Where I'm excited and where I see some opportunity is in ways that we can make this so that there is different ways we can learn blend in some of that adult learning principles that are on the horizon, right? How can we bring AI into some of this? I've been looking at different ways that we can integrate AI in ways like, for example, if you want to practice giving feedback to someone, how can we do that? So if you're not able to do it in a safe space in your job, how can we use AI to give you that experience and now you can get the feedback? Right? We're looking at different ways that we can do blended learning. So maybe you learn some things on your own at your own pace, and then we come together and talk about it and experience it as a cohort. So we're not looking to flip this program on its head. This is a well-established and well-respected program. What we are going to be doing over the next 18 or so months is trying out some different things, seeing how things are going, seeing what people are responding to. But that core components of the Boss Builders program is going to remain.
Well, that's great. And I think if you're a boss builders person this morning and you're like, oh, we're going to lose Mac, oh, what a bummer. Here's what you need to understand. Where I was when I started is about the age Kate is right now. Here's the major difference. First of all, I had no experience. I faked a lot of my stuff early on because I had the confidence I could do it. I learned a lot through trying. I feel good about all the work I've done, but it's taken a long time to get up to the point where I have credible information. Now, here's why that matters to you, boss builders folks. You're getting somebody right now that knows as much as I probably do, and she's a good couple decades younger with a lot more energy and a lot less mileage. So you all are in very good hands for the folks that are in cohorts, for the folks that are some of our physical clients, for people that we've met at conferences. I can sleep really well at night knowing that Kate now is going to take good care of you.
Well, and I'm excited about that. And I will also say, when Mac and I were first connected in 2019, I was just starting out my business. And like he said, had lots of work experience, but was new to the world of entrepreneurship. And Mac has served as a constant in my life since then. Just he's always been a person that I could turn to, that I looked up to, that I would call and say, you're about 10 years ahead of me, work development wise. Help me figure this out. Help me. What are your thoughts on this? So really has been what started off as more of a mentorship, so to speak, has morphed into more of, I think we really started to become thought partners with each other. And then there were a couple conferences where we were there at the same time,
Yep.
or we're sort of two ships passing in the night, but there were literally, I think, some things sketched on the back of napkins, cocktail napkins, as we talked about this. So this is not something, again, that has sprung up. This has been something that, there was a little bit of time when we were in Texas at the same
Mhm.
conference, and I can't remember if we saw each other in New York, but there's been
No, I
times
couldn't
we've,
go to that one because I had to
oh, that's
cancel that one.
right.
Yeah, we were planning to meet up there in New York.
We
That's
were going to
right.
meet,
Yeah.
yeah, but then we
Yeah.
saw each other at the Maryland SHRM conference. So
Yep.
we've met up around the country over the
Mhm.
past couple of years.
So
And
Kate does travel, just not nearly as much as I do. Yeah.
well, I love to travel
Yeah.
actually, and my goal is to go to all 50 states.
Well,
So
gotta beat me on that one. Yeah.
if anyone is out there and looking for any work in Alaska or Hawaii, please let me know because those are going to
Or
be my
North
last two.
Dakota. North Dakota.
I've been to North Dakota.
Oh, how about
Yeah,
Louisiana in August? You've not lived till you've been in Louisiana in August.
July. I was
Close
there in
enough.
July.
Close enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it even makes my hair flat when I go there in the summer.
I
Yeah.
mean, could you imagine this? I mean, it's out of
Well, I
control.
can't imagine it on me, but on you it looks fine. Yeah.
So, the point is that, this has been a very well thought out transition, and we are very excited. And lastly, is you're not going to totally lose Mac because, a lot of the videos still have Mac, a lot of his voice, right? I've been trained in the Mac Monroe ways. And so there are things that I have learned from him that I will apply to him or apply moving forward. And so again, this is really, I think it speaks a lot to your legacy, Mac, also, that this is a strong enough program that it made sense for my company to take this, right? To want to take this really strong foundation. And we've got a lot of energy and excitement around it. And so we will always make sure that we remember our founder, Mr. Mac Monroe, who will always have a little bit of a piece of the Boss Builders program.
Well, I'm grateful for that. If I could think of, what was my legacy to this point, I think Boss Builders is a big part of it. But I think with legacy too, you have to realize that a legacy over time can be really tainted and it can start to fall apart. And I think that's when, it has to get to somebody credible. Again, if you're a Boss Builders person and you're like, well, what's Kate's style? She's like a more pleasant version of me, very direct, doesn't take any shit. She'll probably drop a few bad words here and there, but that is necessary in our business because it's a dirty business that you're in if you're in management. And you need to know it ain't sunshine and rainbows. It's very direct. So the beauty of Kate is she is a softer version of me, but she still will tell it to you directly, which is exactly what you're going to need to know. So you
Mhm.
are in good hands, and I will be very comfortable doing what I do from this point on, knowing that you're all in very good hands.
And speaking of good hands, Mac will be off doing creative things. He's not totally, just gonna go off and smoke cigars into the sunset, but he's doing pottery and art. And this is sort of a new phase of your life, which is really exciting as well.
It is. It's, I didn't want to just say I'm going to be done and I'm not going to do anything. Pottery came along over the last few years, which has been perfect timing. I've also, some of you that know, I'm really more and more into storytelling now. I've attempted to compete in a moth event. I want to continue to do those because those are fun. You don't get prizes, but it's just knowing you can tell a good story. But I could see myself helping organizations, with their marketing. How do you tell a better story to promote a product? The management stuff, that's in much better hands now. So for me, it'll be that a little, maybe some catering here and there. And certainly, if you're in the inner circle will go on. And I would love for you to stay with me. And for those of you folks on the Mount Vernon side, if you want a weekly story, that would be a great place. And we'll provide a link for you to do that and just insights and different ways to look at things. But I am hoping that these next, hopefully many years ahead of me are productive ones and that I can finally get around to the things I've enjoyed doing. But again, I can sleep good at night knowing that every one of you are in very good hands.
All right. Well, Mac, we are excited for this new journey. We will be cheering you on, and any chance I get to promote some of your fantastic work, either from the pottery side, the storytelling side, and let's not forget the brisket making.
There you go.
Right. So the barbecue, we have a barbecue champ here who can speak all things smoker and sauce related. So Mac will still be a part of the Mount Vernon community. And we really are a family. And I think also for as much as Mac jokes that I'm, a softer version of him, I'm a Pittsburgh girl in a DC world. So I still got a little bit of that, that gumption in me that'll never quite leave. So might look a little soft on the surface, but deep down, we don't put up with a lot. So but it's been I'm really excited for all of this. And I think at the end of the day, the reason that this works is because Mount Vernon Consulting and Boss Builders, Mac and I both have very similar values, right? We like to deliver it to you straight. We
Mhm.
don't mince words if we don't need to. We build in some storytellings, but we genuinely care about developing strong leaders in the workplace. We are very, very committed to that. And so that will continue through when we work with Mount Vernon Consulting.
Very good. Well, Kate, thank you so much for being willing to go ahead and take us on. And for those of you on our side, I'm really excited about the possibilities. And for you folks at Mount Vernon, if you ever get to interface with some of my inner circle, you are going to be much better for the experience. There's some great people.